Sometimes I just feel like I'm talking to a wall. 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 Hello? Hello? Hello and welcome to Inspiral Out Loud, where we're exploring ways to create a thriving world for all sentients. So today I'm going to talk about communication. I know that for myself and a lot of others, especially in the last few years, there seems to be growing situations where trying to communicate with someone, it doesn't matter how clear the intent is for understanding and clarity. It just feels like there's a wall there somehow. I've spoken about this previously relating to timelines, feeling like that's almost like the timelines are in conflict somehow. And I've had experiences where with somebody else, it literally feels like our timelines are pushing against each other somehow and in conflict, which is then creating two completely different conversations at the same time. It's quite bizarre. So I know that we're having lots of those kinds of experiences. At the same time, many different aspects of the world, as things are progressing more, as we're evolving, shifting, frequencies are changing, whatever kind of word you want to put to it for the way that things are changing, we seem to be conflicted more, challenged more, pushed more. So being able to clear our basic modes of communication feels really quite important at the moment to try and alleviate some of that. And so this has come up for me yet again recently with an associate, where we've tried to work our way through, and it doesn't matter what is said, the conflict just keeps arising. And I know that both parties are wanting this to be settled. So part of that feels like cultural differences. There can be all sorts of triggers from our various neuroses and our various traumas from childhood, from influences from astrology and things like that, if you believe in that kind of influence. There's lots of things influencing us. But through all of that, there are some ways still that we can try and find a way through with hopefully as little conflict as possible. And so a lot of this has come out of my background and study in counselling and so on. I'm not a qualified counsellor, but I have looked into those areas. So this was a situation where my intent was pure. I hadn't deliberately caused any harm. I asked a question that was based in my own moment of weakness, of fear, of vulnerability. And so the intent was to find a way through. The intent was not deliberately hurt. So just to put it in that context. And so it was out of genuine concern, but unfortunately the result of that created a lot of hurt in the other person. So, but the content of that isn't as important as the process was. And the process was facing a situation of blame as opposed to self-responsibility. And I know that that's easier said than done. So I'm just going to walk through it. Look, we've all been there, and it's taken me it took me years to be able to move through this, because personally, I used to work from a place of blame. A lot of us feel like if we take the blame, it's literally going to kill us. Sometimes it actually feels that dire, especially if we're holding deep trauma, deep childhood traumas in our bodies. And so the need to project and to get that energy out can be strong. I understand that. I get that. I've been there. But I'm just going to go through some steps on how we can try and navigate these situations where one person either says something or does something and another person is triggered because of that. Okay. So position 1, where we're in a situation of blame. And in this situation, you can hear things like, well, you're wrong and this is all your fault. It's pushing something back on the person that has said something that has hurt us. We need to look at this and say, well, what is actually our desire in this communication? And the desire in that form of communication is coming out of reactivity and projectivity. We project something when we can't hold on to it inside, right? You did this terrible thing to me, and like that's it. A lot of the focus in that can then shift to then try and put the other person down. And those kinds of approaches, the intent is destructive. It's not constructive. And that might be things like, you're bad, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're an idiot, you're ridiculous. Those kind of blanket put downs, they're not spoken to create understanding. They're spoken to put the other person down. And the effect of that is that the other person's identity then becomes threatened. Because you're not talking about the thing that the person did anymore. You're talking about the person and their whole identity now. And what that does, it puts them on the back foot. When we feel threatened, what happens when we're threatened? We defend ourselves, right? And so when we defend ourselves, we are now in a reactive space. And in a reactive space, then our neuroses come up. And so your various neuroses might be, like when I was doing a lot of theta healing and so on, like it would always be, I am unlovable, I am unworthy, everybody always leaves me, like these core seed beliefs, they come up when our entire identity is threatened and we need to protect ourselves. And so the response to that is obviously, well, obviously you don't love me. Obviously you don't want to spend time with me. Just leave me alone. I don't trust you anymore. It's then blanket responses to just try and get somebody off your back, right? Which then is just creating more conflict. And so we spiral around. The effect on the person who is doing the initial put downs, they're actually grabbing power. Somebody who's feeling self-empowered doesn't need to put somebody else down. You don't need to. Somebody that's actually feeling self-empowered is able to navigate their emotions without having to put other people down. So putting other people down is a power grab. And you will notice my finger. As soon as you point the finger, you have one finger pointing forwards and 3 fingers pointing back. And an accusation, an insult, anything like that always says more about you than about the person that you are trying to inflict that negative emotion or feeling onto. And so the effect of this kind of communication is that the party that has received the insults and so on, they can't go back from that. That can't be undone. Now their entire identity in relation to the insulter is based on those words, those descriptions of them. And so it creates a lack of safety, a lack of trust, and the relationship is going to break down sooner or later, because the person's entire identity in that scenario has now been threatened. Now, communication really is one of the trickiest things to navigate. I know this so well. You know, I've been going through this for many, many years. So I've I come at this from understanding both points of view, honestly. It has cost me friends in the past. I don't pretend to know it all about this, but I can share with you what I've learned on how we can improve things. So if we come to it from a position of taking responsibility and taking ownership of our reaction, we don't need to project. We can take the energy away from blame, take ownership of the emotion, but then explain the action itself and how that affected you without completely destroying the energy between you and the other person. If that's what you want, you might just want to destroy the energy between you and another person. And if that's the case, that's fine. Go with the blame. But if you actually want to repair things, then you can take another approach. And it does take some self-tending. It just does. So instead of focusing on the what you did really, really pissed me off, right? Instead of just focusing on the what, you can focus on that for yourself. But when you're communicating with somebody, perhaps you could try focusing on the why. Why did that person say that thing, do that thing, behave that way? Maybe they felt threatened. Maybe they didn't know any better. Maybe they were exhausted. Maybe their cultural differences meant that they didn't see your point of view. Maybe their values in life are different from yours. Maybe their intent was pure, but they had the wrong information. Maybe somebody told them something that was wrong. Like, there's so many reasons why. Most of the time, when we get angry at people, in my experience, it's because an action that they've done, we've taken it that they've done it deliberately to hurt us. But most of the time, it's not that way. So by being able to step away from the blame and just say, okay, can we just talk about this? Why did you do that? And listen. Maybe there's a great opportunity for growth. Now, I'm not talking about being walked all over, but you can start to talk. If you've been hurt, you can start to talk about the thing that hurt you, not the person that hurt you. That was a hurtful thing to say. That was an irresponsible thing to do. That behavior made me feel angry. When you take the identity of the hurtful thing away from the person and just focus and have that as something else, as another part. So you've got a triad, right? You can address the behavior, but you're not attacking the person. And if you're not attacking the person, then maybe that person will actually want to work with you to get some understanding. It means that their identity in their relationship to you is secure. So you can condone the person without condoning the behavior, right? So the result of that means that there's an opportunity for growth, hopefully. And maybe that person, without having the intensity of that defense mechanism activated in them, can actually then turn around and say, okay, how was that hurtful? How could I have done that better? How can we move through this now? What kind of resolution can I offer? Maybe you can start to get some understanding instead of just cutting off the bridge. And so when you learn to work in this way, you're not engaged in a power grab. There's no need to put the other person down. You can both maintain your equal status as far as energy and power goes, while you discuss the topic of the behavior itself. And so the outcome of that can now become a new understanding and an expansion between you. and it can be very regenerative. There is still the issue, though, of then what to do with the anger, right? Because some things just do trigger us. I still get triggered all the time. But when you're feeling triggered, when you're feeling angry, that is not the time to be having these types of conversations. That is the time to be moving through the anger. And so it might be a case of, I am feeling very reactive right now. I can't talk rationally about this. I just need some time, some space for an hour, for a day, for a week, whatever it is, to move through the anger so I can come back and talk about this rationally and calmly. And there's so many tools for moving through anger. Like one of the favorite ones that I use, it's actually a form of Kundalini yoga. And it's about a 40-minute process, and it's very helpful. If you look up anything to do with how to move through anger, you'll find it. There's a lot of different yoga. There's a lot of methods like primal therapy, like going and having a scream, bashing the shit out of a pillow, writing it out, drawing it out, screaming it out. Like, you need to get that intensity out of you. I mean, we used to get baseball bats and just smash the shit out of mattresses. I mean, get it out, right? Go and curse and swear. Do what you need to do. Get the anger out. It needs to move. I'm not talking about suppressing anger. And if you are communicating with somebody that is able to move through that anger with you, then even better, right? I mean, I have been in scenarios where, you know, we've been gridlocked, we're literally screaming at each other, but with the agreement that the purpose is simply to let the energy out, right? We need to let the energy out. And that can be tough because at the bottom of a lot of anger, as most of our anger, is deep sadness and sorrow. You know, most of those deep triggers, that's what you get to at the bottom of it. That's why anger is such a magnificent antidepressant. So I'm not saying it's an easy process. Just go and scream and shout and the world will be rosy. No, it's not about that at all. It's about getting real. It's about getting real with yourself. And that's both sides, all sides of these equations. Because even if you are talking to someone who can deal with their anger in a productive way, and you can sit down and just speak calmly with them, if you've been at fault and you've said something hurtful, you've still got to deal with that, whether they're reactive or not. None of us are perfect. You know, we're all just doing the best with what we've got. We're all just doing our life as best as we can, trying not to piss anybody off. So the best we can do is at least try to bring some light into the situation. So just a few questions that you can ask yourself, whether you're the one that's been triggered or you're the one that's been triggering the other person. What do I want out of this engagement now? It's pretty simple. Do you want to build the relationship again, or the friendship, or the work collaboration, or the family relationship, whatever it was, or whatever it is? Do you want to build, rebuild, strengthen it, or do you want to destroy it? If you want to destroy it, you don't need this video. If you want to rebuild it, this information might be helpful. You need to consider, do you actually ask yourself, do I want to work through this right now, or do I just want to let go of anger? And if your heart is burning, if you've got tightness, if you've got heat, if you've got stress in your chest, in your heart, and it's uncomfortable and you're feeling tense, it's probably not the best time to talk, because you're just going to be letting off anger, and that is not the way to move through a conversation like this. Have the conversation like this later. Move through the anger now. Do you want to just go over and over and over what happened, or do you want to actually look deeper into the why it happened? Are you able to ask, what is this actually triggering in me? Where is my center of power right now? If you're reactive, I'm telling you this right now, your power is not within yourself. You have given your power to the other person. When you regain your power, you do not need to let fly. You can be angry, but you can still be rational and calm and civil. And you can still maintain responsibility for your feelings, even while that other person has pissed you off. And quite simply, what do you want to create in this relationship right now? What do you want to create? What do you want to create? I would love to hear your experiences, what you've dealt with, how you have dealt with your anger when you have been triggered by someone very, very deeply, how you maintained your balance in that. And when you have made some kind of mistake, said the wrong thing, done the wrong thing, had to deal with the consequences, what has that brought up in you? What lessons have you gained from that? What are the gems in these things? All of these situations, they always have their gems. We know that. We know that. Everything is a teacher if we just care to learn. I'm still learning. Every single day I'm learning. And I'm grateful to you for joining me on this humble little ride through this crazy little journey called life. We're all just walking each other home. Let's just try and do it as gently as possible. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to hear more from me, and I would love to hear more from you, please like and subscribe, and please drop your comments below and let me know where you're at. Till next time, my friends, have a beautiful day and keep dreaming a good dream. Ciao for now.